Hey guys, it's Matt. I'm so sorry it's taken so long for me to record. Know that I'm not giving up or anything. Again, it's just been a lot recently. I've been working 7 days a week, so I've just been really tired. And this can be a really intense fic to read, so I kind of was taking a little break from it for a while, but hopefully we'll be back as consistently as I can. But yeah. Choices by MesserMoon, Chapter 26. Chapter notes. Content warning. Sexual content. I want to say that this is like YA level sexual content, but I could be wrong, but I feel like that's accurate. Part 1. Lily. The friendship of Lily Evans and Mary McDonald's began under a bed. Lily's bed, to be exact. See, she'd been having a bad day. It was the first year, and everything was just a little much. She missed her mom and dad. Back then, she even missed Petunia. And Severus was there, but he wasn't there. He was in Slytherin. After the sorting, Lily had briefly considered begging the Hat to put her in Slytherin too. Eventually, after being placed in the same house as Black and Potter. There hadn't been any posh kids at her old school, but they were about as obnoxious and self-obsessed as she'd expected. And Potter was so gaga for Gryffindor, she was certain it would be filled with people just like him. In the end, however, Lily had not had the guts to ask anything of the Sorting Hat, so she had remained in Gryffindor. And mostly, that had been okay. Posh, bespeckled prats aside, her roommates were nice, her classes were fun, and she did rather like not living in a dungeon. But she was also lonely, and out of place, and uncomfortable. There were so many things that the kids around her, even if they weren't purebloods, seemed to know, and it felt impossible trying to keep up with it all. Severus did his best to help her along, but she could tell that he was sometimes a little bit embarrassed by her. That was the worst feeling, honestly. One afternoon, at the end of September, for no reason in particular, it had just felt too much. So she crawled under her bed, trying to make the world a bit smaller, easier to manage. About 15 minutes into her pity party, Mary had walked in. Lily watched her feet, listened to the David Bowie song she hummed under her breath. Her and Mary had barely exchanged more than a few sentences, but she was secretly Lily's favorite roommate, if only because she was the one that reminded Lily the most of home. The posters she hung on the walls were of all people Lily recognized, and they didn't move or talk. Plus, sometimes she would complain about things that Lily could relate to, like missing ballpoint pens and 3-ringed binders. She's not sure, to this day, what compelled her to speak then. Surely the smart thing to do would have been to remain silent and hope that her new roommate wouldn't notice her having a complete and utter mental breakdown. But being quiet had never really been Lily's strong suit. "Do you have records?" she wondered out loud. "Ah!" Mary shouted, her feet stumbling back into her bed. "Jesus Christ, Lily, is that you?" "It's just that I've never seen you play any, but you hum them all the time," she said in lieu of an answer. Where the hell are you?" Mary demanded. "At home, I have a bunch of records, but my mom wouldn't let me bring them. She didn't know how safe it would be here, and she was worried they'd get stolen. Not that wizards are dying from muggle music, but of course she didn't know that. Still doesn't know, I suppose." "Lily," Mary says harshly, "did you get turned invisible or something?" "What? Oh," Lily blinked. "No, I'm not invisible." "Then why the hell can I hear you prattling on, but there's not a single freckle in my line of vision?" Lily scowled up at the bottom of her bed. "I don't have that many freckles." "Uh-huh, and the giant squid doesn't have that many legs." "Did you just... Where are you?" She was beginning to sound genuinely exasperated. But to be honest, Lily quite liked being a disembodied voice. It was freeing. "I'm under here," she said eventually, and with great reluctance. Oh, honestly. Some shuffling later, Mary was kneeling on the floor and peering at Lily under their bed. "What the hell are you doing?" is what Lily expected her to say. If it had been Petunia, freak might have even been thrown in there somewhere. But the thing about Mary, the beautiful, fantastic, brilliant thing about Mary, was that she never did what you were expecting. "I see," is what she actually said, before sliding under the bed to lie right alongside Lily. "What's happened then? You and your boyfriend have a fight?" "Boyfriend?" Lily repeated, confused. And then, "Oh, no. Sev isn't... We aren't... We're just friends. Though her face blushed so hard it burned. Mary turned her head to look at Lily, brow arched. Really? Then you two might want to stop making googly eyes at one another all the time. We don't do that, Lily said almost desperately. You do, don't, do, don't, do, don't infinity. Mary rolled her eyes. Whatever. So that's not why you're under here. What is? Lily chewed on her lip, looking back at the bottom of her bed. I just think, I don't know, that someone made a mistake. Probably, but you'll have to be more specific. At 11, Mary's dry sense of humor was largely lost on Lily. Mary would later credit her wit to her childhood obsession with Monty Python. I just don't think I'm supposed to be a witch. Lily didn't have to turn her head to know that Mary was staring at her. What do you mean, supposed to be? You are a witch. Lily let out a frustrated noise. But I'm not really, though, am I? I'm a muggle. That's literally not true. Yes, but I know muggle things, and I like muggle things, and I don't know anything about wizards, really. People like Marlene or Alice or, God, even James Bloody Potter. Those people are meant to be witches and wizards. It's in their blood. It comes to them so naturally. None of this is natural to me. Mary continued to stare at her for long enough that Lily started to squirm. She had rather been hoping that out of everyone, Mary would understand. Did you know that the Gryffindor Quidditch team is almost always half-bloods and purebloods? The other girl said suddenly. Lily blinked, adjusting to this change in topic. No, I didn't. And even when they are Muggleborns, they're always seventh years because it takes them that long to pick up the game. Mary nodded. Not me, though. I'm going to get it in 3. I'm going to be the youngest Muggle-born Quidditch player ever on the Gryffindor team. And you know why? Lily shook her head, and Mary inched a little closer. To piss them the fuck off. And at that time, swearing was still rather new to Lily, so she actually gasped, and after several moments of shocked silence, managed to stammer. Them? Mary waved her hands above her as much as the bed would allow. The powers that be, the system, the man, the snooty purebloods, because I am every bit as much of a witch as they are. Her eyes locked onto Lily's. And so are you. After that, they'd gone to the Great Hall and only eaten dessert for dinner, and eventually Marlene had joined them, and Lily had felt better, and by Christmas, she didn't want to leave. But that moment under the bed, the moment her and Mary really became friends, had always stuck with her. Always made her smile a little. Made her feel better when someone in her class laughed at some bit of magic she didn't know. Something that was obvious, that little kids learned. I'm every bit as much of a witch as you are, she'd think, channeling Mary as best as she could. Because Mary never apologized for herself. Never felt embarrassed. Never backed down from a fight. She was unstoppable. The bruises take time to show up. When they do, Lily waves them away with the flick of her wand. They're blue and yellow on Mary's wrists, her neck, her jaw. They look like flower petals, like fingerprints. Mary hasn't opened her eyes yet, at least not since Marlene and Lily have been here. Apparently, she talked to McGonagall and Dumbledore, but they hadn't been allowed in then. By the time they had, Mary had been given a sleeping potion. That was a few hours ago. Marlene is sitting in her chair next to her. She hasn't spoken all day, her eyes intent on Mary's face. Pomfrey wouldn't tell them what happened, but she would tell them that Mary's had a blow to the back of the head, a bad one. She'll have a concussion, but there are potions for that. Any more severe brain damage, and they'll have to send her to St. Mungo's, but it's hard to tell at this point if that'll happen, because she hasn't been awake long enough to know. Despite all of those horrible details, it's still the bruises that Lily can't stop thinking about. Someone did this. Someone did this on purpose. They did this with their bare hands. Who, though? Marlene croaks beside her, causing Lily to jump. Apparently, she'd said that last bit out loud. She looks over at Marlene, and after a second, she shrugs. It'd have had to be Slytherin, older years. My guess is the boys. None of the girls could take her in a fight, could leave their fingerprints embedded in her skin. Marlene's face scrunches, eyes still on Mary. But why? That question takes Lily by surprise. A reminder of the difference between Marlene's life and her own, and Mary's. Because she's a mudblood. Marlene's eyes go wide. You think this was about blood status? Of course, she wants to say. Obviously, except it's clear that this is not the obvious conclusion for Marlene. They've been getting bolder, Lily tries to explain, shouting at us in the halls, jinxing us, and Mary is not likely to walk away from a fight. Fuck. Marlene drops her head into her hands, staying like that for a few minutes before she speaks again. Did the teachers know? That's a question Lily asks herself frequently. They know, but sometimes I think they don't quite believe us. Or they think it's as simple as house rivalries. Her eyes trail back to Mary. Maybe they'll take us more seriously now. Marlene lets out a pained noise. I didn't realize. She drops her hands, looking up. I knew they were jerks sometimes, but I didn't realize it had gotten this bad. To be fair to Marlene, Lily isn't entirely sure she'd realized it gotten this bad either. She certainly hadn't considered the possibility of one of them being attacked like this. At Hogwarts. It crossed a line somehow. Kids were cruel. They name-called and teased. Lily was no stranger to it. Heck, she got it for her hair back home. For a while, Mudblood hadn't felt that much different. But this? Mary starts to stir, grumbling as she turns her head from one side to the other. Instantly, Marlene and Lily are on their feet. Mary? Marlene says quietly, desperately. She takes her friend's hand and squeezes. It's odd to see Mary like this. Small. There's something about her that fills up every room. She's colorful and loud and abrasive and a pain in the ass, but never small. Never fragile. Not until now. Mary's eyes blink open, bloodshot and momentarily terrified. She jolts upright and instantly grabs her head. Jesus, fuck, that hurts. She hisses, her voice rough and yet somehow incredibly comforting. Apparently, Marlene thinks so too, because she starts frantically wiping the tears from her eyes. Lily reaches out and squeezes her arm. After a few seconds, Mary's face relaxes, hands dropping from her head as she looks at them properly. Her eyes go from Marlene to Lily and back again. I'm sorry. It's really good to hear your voice. Marlene is so busy trying to keep the tears off her cheeks that she misses the soft look in Mary's eyes. Okay, enough. Jesus, I'm not dead. Marlene sniffles. But when her eyes come up, they're fierce. Don't joke about that. Not right now. Not when... You could have been. She doesn't say, but judging by the new tension that falls around them, they're all thinking it anyway. Pfft, Mary scoffs, propping her pillow up behind her and then carefully leaning herself against it. It's clear that she's in pain. If I'm going to die young, it better be because I overdosed at an orgy or something, not because some twats imperioused me while I wasn't looking. They what? Marlene's eyes grow to about twice their normal size. They used an unforgivable. Mary's eyes travel between the pair of them. Pumphrey didn't tell you anything? They shake their heads. She told us that you split the back of your head open, but that's about it. Lily doesn't mention the bruises. Mary snorts. Boy, did I ever. She brings her hand back to her head. I swear, if these headaches don't quit, I'm going to start breaking things. Do you want me to go get Pumphrey? Marlene asks, but Mary waves her off. Not yet. She'll only put me to sleep again. She pinches the bridge of her nose, taking in a deep breath. What time is it? Supper, Lily answers quickly. 6:30 about. Mary nods and then winces. The day? Lily and Marlene exchange a quick glance. Thursday. Thursday, she repeats. And then, you reckon Slughorn will give me a pass on that potions paper? Lily can't help it. She laughs. Yeah, I think he'll probably let it slide this time. Sweet. Mary drops her hand again, taking in another deep breath. You're sure you don't want me to get Pomfrey? Marlene asks nervously. I just want to not be out of my head for a few more minutes, okay? Bit by bit, Lily thinks she can see Mary growing paler. It's clear that the longer she's conscious, the more she hurts. The boys were here, by the way, Lily hears herself say. Mary opens her eyes. The boys? James, Sirius, Remus, Pete. They came as soon as they heard. Sat in the hallway waiting with us, but Pomfrey would only allow 2 visitors. Mary smirks. Nothing like a head injury to make a girl popular. There's a pause, none of them quite knowing what to say. It goes on for too long before Marlene finally breaks. Mary, she says softly, what the hell happened? Well, Mary smiles in a cold kind of way, sending shivers down Lily's arms. Isn't that the 1,000-galleon question? You don't remember? Marlene asks. Mary shrugs, wincing again. Bits and pieces. Pomfrey says it'll get better with time. But you know you were Imperious, Lily asks. Yeah. Her eyes flick down and she becomes suddenly very interested in smoothing out the wrinkles in her bed sheets. I know that. Lily can't quite imagine it. The idea, the concept itself is terrifying. To have someone gain complete control of you, to have the power to make you do whatever they wanted, it makes her skin crawl. Do you know who... Marlene reaches out to take her hand again, squeezing. Mary scrunches her face. Sometimes. Marlene and Lily exchange another look, and when Mary doesn't continue, Lily prods her. Sometimes? Like I said, it's all bits and pieces. She pulls her mouth to the side, still staring down at the bed. It gets all stretched out. I see a face, and then it disappears. Then sometimes there are bodies without faces at all. Sometimes the faces switch bodies. Marlene looks about as terrified as Lily feels. Mary's words have an itching quality to them. They creep along the floor. They grab at your legs, crawl up your spine. Do you know the faces? Lily finally finds herself asking. It feels a bit like Mary isn't quite there. Something distant about her eyes. It reminds Lily of the school ghosts. Mulciber, she finally says, hands curling in the sheets. It was Mulciber. At least, it's usually Mulciber. Lily has no idea what to do with the end of that sentence. Mary is starting to get frighteningly pale. What the fuck? Marlene hisses. You told McGonagall, right? Dumbledore? What are they doing? No idea, Mary says. Didn't tell me. What can they do? Lily finds herself asking. Expel him? Expel? Marlene scoffs. For an unforgivable? They better be calling the fucking ministry in. Mar, Mary croaks, her free hand coming up to massage her temple. I appreciate the righteous indignation, but maybe a bit less screechy. Marlene's cheeks flush. Sorry. Lily's about to suggest that they really ought to get Pomfrey now, since Mary is looking ready to keel over, but Marlene cuts her off. Weird that it was Mulciber. When was the last time you even talked to him? No idea, Mary says. Was he alone? Lily thinks she sees Mary tense. She definitely sees Mary's eyes flick up to meet hers before dropping back to the bed. I don't know. It's not very clear. But that doesn't sit well with Lily. Mary, she says softly, eventually bringing her friend's gaze back to her. And she can see it right there in the whites of her eyes. Lily feels her heart sink. "Tell me," she says, because she doesn't want to have to wonder, to guess. She just wants to know, to hear it, to face it. "Avery was there, I'm pretty sure," Mary says slowly, and Lily knows what's coming. Really, she does. She knows it by the worry on Mary's face and the reluctant way she drags out her words. But then still, somehow, she isn't ready. And Snape. It's a bit like getting gut punched in the stomach, that sentence. A bit like having your heart broken. A bit like falling off your broom. It's so hard to explain to people, but she really had loved him. Loved him most of her life. Loved him still. Maybe that's one of those things that just never stops. Can't be undone. She wonders how many times someone has to let you down before you don't get back up again. "Excuse me," she says tersely, shaking as she turns her heels and starts for the door. "Lily?" Marlene calls after her. "Get Pumphrey," she snaps over her shoulder. "She needs a bloody pain potion." She doesn't hear her response, already pushing through the door. He'll be in the Great Hall for dinner. Most of the school will be in there, in fact. Lily doesn't really care, hands and fists at her sides as she cuts across the castle. She doesn't have a plan, just a storm of rage inside her that demands an outlet, that's been growing since she first saw her friend lying broken in that bed. The Great Hall is noisy. It always is at this time. Nearly everyone is there. "Lily," someone calls out to her. Remus, she thinks. She doesn't look. Eyes scanning the Slytherin table until they land on one particular black-haired head. Severus doesn't see her coming until she's practically on top of him. Lily." "Up," she snaps. His brows draw together. "Lily, what?" "Get up now." Still looking thoroughly confused, he does as she asks, standing far too close to her. "What's happened?" he asks in a hushed voice, because, of course, he can't have anyone overhear him being decent. Which only infuriates her more, because he knows. He knows what's happened. And for a moment, she feels frozen, with all the anger coursing through her. "Lily?" He reaches out and touches her arm. She's surprised, honestly, that he would be so bold in front of his friends. "Let's go somewhere, okay? Let's talk?" But she doesn't want to talk. Childishly, she shoves him hard in the chest, and it's probably because he isn't expecting it that he falls back, ass slamming into the floor, barely able to catch himself on his hands. Suddenly, all that noise from earlier evaporates. The Great Hall is as close to silent as Lily has ever heard it. "Merlin, what the hell?" Severus says from the ground. "It doesn't make a difference." Her voice shakes more than she'd like it to. "That's what you said. Do you remember?" He blinks up at her, eyes darting nervously to the table beside them. It feels like the whole hall is watching them now. "No," she laughs coldly. "Of course you don't. Let me remind you. I asked you if it mattered, being a Muggle-born, and you said no." His eyes come back to hers, dark and pleading. How did we get here? How? "Was it a lie then?" she goes on. "Or was it only later? Did you hate me always? Was any of it real?" His face pales, and he shakes his head furiously as he forgets about their audience, about his friends. "I don't hate you," he says desperately. "You know that. You have to know that. I told you. You told me it doesn't make a difference." And that shuts him up. Sucks the words right down his throat. "We're the same, me and Mary. Don't you see that?" She goes on, shaking terribly. "Everything you think about her, that you say about her, that you do to her," her voice cracks right down the center, "you do it to me, too." "No," Severus says more fiercely. She shakes her head. "I know you, Sev. I know you think that doing this makes you strong, makes up for all the time you spent in that house afraid, unable to help her. How are things at your house? Fine. They're not arguing anymore? Oh, yes, they're arguing. But it won't be that long, and I'll be gone. Doesn't your dad like magic? He doesn't like anything much. Severus has gone stock still on the floor of the great hall. He's always hated talking about his family. Usually, Lily lets him avoid the subject, though for a long time it killed her, standing idly by while he was hurt, over and over again. Okay, maybe it still kills her. I wish you could see, she goes on eventually, the whole world disappearing, just as it always used to when it was only the two of them. That this makes you just like him. He physically flinches. Lily, begging now. You're a coward, Severus. Her voice is splinters, breaking off in every direction. For what you did to me, for what you did to Mary, you're a coward. She tries to breathe, tries to keep herself under control, tries to make sure that he knows she means it. She steps forward, leaning closer to him. I hope you fucking choke. You can hate someone and love someone at the same time, Lily has learned. First, with her sister. Now, with Severus. God, she thinks as she pulls back. You used to be my home. She's barely taken a step toward the doors before McGonagall's voice rings through the silent room. Miss Evans. Lily turns to face her. The older woman has walked out from behind the teacher's table, nearly meeting Lily where she stands. My office, she says sternly. Now. Lily doesn't fight it. How could she? Doesn't regret it either. Following McGonagall out of the room with her eyes very determinedly on the space in front of her, not the faces around her. Sit, McGonagall says when they get to her office, closing the door behind them with the flick of her wand. Lily does as she's asked, sitting in a chair in front of the desk and watching as McGonagall takes the one behind it. The ensuing silence makes Lily feel twitchy, the adrenaline pumping through her still demanding action. Eventually, she cracks. Look, Professor, I understand that what I did broke about a dozen rules, and I am fully willing to accept any punishment you see fit, but I absolutely will not be apologizing to him. McGonagall continues to watch her in silence for another moment before pushing something toward her across the desk. A tin? Have a biscuit, Miss Evans, she says casually. Lily blinks, looking down at the shortbread being offered to her. Unsure what to do, she reaches forward and takes one. Thank you? Professor McGonagall smiles tightly. If anyone asks, I gave you the dressing down of your life. You understand? It takes Lily far too long to catch on to what's happening. Oh, she says eventually, and when McGonagall arches her brows, she quickly adds, Yes, I will, of course. Good. Another moment of silence passes before McGonagall speaks again. I've always liked Mary MacDonald. Her voice is as soft as Lily has ever heard it, and she isn't sure if it makes her want to laugh or cry. Yeah, she croaks eventually. Me too. Part 2. Regulus. Regulus is on edge, but no one comes for him. He isn't called into any offices, isn't interrogated by any teachers, or aurors for that matter. The day actually starts out rather normal. The only signs that something is wrong are the missing faces from the Gryffindor table during breakfast. No Marlene McKinnon, no Lily Evans, no James Potter or Sirius Black or Peter Pettigrew. No Mary MacDonald. As the day goes on, the rumors start to filter through the school. They're vague. Mary MacDonald is in the infirmary. Someone's jealous girlfriend took revenge. No, actually, it was a Quidditch accident. She'd been drinking and fell off the astronomy tower. She'd been outside after dark and gotten attacked by a werewolf. That one Regulus finds particularly funny because A, as if there could be a werewolf at Hogwarts that no one knew about, and B, last night was not a full moon. Regardless, with every reiteration, the story gets further and further from the truth, and Regulus feels himself start to relax. Maybe this whole thing will blow over. Then, dinner happens. It's not that he doesn't enjoy watching Snape get his ass handed to him. He really does. The problem is that almost immediately after McGonagall drags Lily Evans away, the tone of the rumors start to shift. Mary McDonald is in the infirmary because of Severus Snape, people start to whisper, which is not, by and large, a story Regulus has a problem with, except it's just close enough to the truth that it brings back the pressure behind his ribs. It is at that moment, with anxiety at the rise again, that Remus Lupin decides to show up. Empty Charms classroom, 3rd floor, 15 minutes. That's all he says before walking away. Regulus had been hoping we'd forget about the Veritaserum in the wake of Mary's attack, but apparently not. Which is just excellent, because obviously what he wants to be doing after altering someone's memory is be placed under Veritaserum in the presence of 3 angry hero complex having Gryffindors. And yes, he trusts James to keep his promise. But he's also not an idiot. He knows Sirius won't stick to the agreement. Knows he'll try and take advantage of the situation. It's just what he's like. But Regulus can't think of any other way to placate him and, by extent, James. He berates himself as he marches down the hall toward the empty classroom. He knows better than to make threats he doesn't intend to follow through on, because this is the kind of situation you end up in when you do. But stupid Sirius had be stupid standing there with his stupid boyfriend? Lover? Regulus pulls a face at the thought of his brother having a lover and decides to drop that train of thought altogether. He can actually feel his hands shaking. He's nervous. More embarrassing than that, he's scared. He's been going over in his head the different ways he can get around any questions Sirius might ask without lying. It's not possible to disobey the Veritaserum. Well, at least if it's been made by any kind of competent potioneer. But it's possible to control it at some extent. It takes strength, though, and thoughtfulness. It also requires you to go slow. If you get on a truth-telling roll, it can be hard to rein it back in again. Regulus's feet stutter outside the classroom door, and for a minute, he considers just walking right by it. But he already has enough hanging over him right now. He doesn't need more. With shaking, sweaty hands, he reaches for the door and pushes. Finally, Merlin, did you fucking crawl here? Sirius is lying on his back on a teacher's desk at the front of the class, Lupin in the chair beside him and James leaning against the wall. Bit bold to be rude to the person in possession of the information you're so desperate to keep quiet. Sirius sits up so fast that Regulus is surprised he doesn't faint. Is that another threat? More like an accurate summary of the situation. Sirius growls, hopping off the desk and striding toward him. Listen here, you spoiled brat. Pot, meet, kettle. Sirius gives him a shove. We are not the same. A cold smirk pulls at the corner of Regulus's mouth. Aren't we, though? The rage that inspires in his older brother is something to behold. Eyes going dark, cheeks flushing red. Sirius reaches for something. His wand, maybe? But Lupin pulls him back, just like he did in the corridor. Enough, he says quietly. Sirius is glaring, so Regulus makes sure to flash him his most unpleasant smile. He's pretty sure he picked it up from Walburga. Let's get this over with, shall we? James says, pushing himself off the wall. Regulus looks at him, briefly, and then away. It's a lot harder to keep his mask on when James is around. James kicks out a chair and then gestures to it. Regulus notes that he's not making much eye contact either. With a confidence that he does not feel, Regulus strides forward and sits, watching as Lupin passes James the potion. His pulse starts to speed up again. James is many things, but a good actor is not one of them. There's worry in his eyes when he turns to Regulus. A question. Because James always asks. Always. And Regulus can tell that it's killing him, that he can't now. Not really. Regulus can't imagine how they convince Sirius that James should be the one to do this. No doubt he's already suspicious of something, even if it isn't close to the truth. And as Regulus stares at the vial in James's hands, all he can think of is, please, not the mark. Ask me anything else, but don't ask me about the mark. I'm not ready to lose him. Not yet. Just let me have him for a little longer. Just let me pretend a little longer. Eventually, James holds out the potion and Regulus takes it, hoping it's not obvious that his hands are shaking. He turns it over a few times before looking back up. He focuses on James. It helps. What's the question? Sirius lets out a frustrated huff. You know what the question is. But Regulus doesn't look away from James. Do you, Regulus Black, intend to expose, in any way, James goes on, in a tone that suggests this has been rehearsed a few times, the nature of the relationship between Sirius Black, your brother, and Remus Lupin, to anyone? Regulus stares at him, and then, because he can't help it, because Sirius brings out all the nasty, childish parts of him, he says in a mocking tone, but what kind of relationship could they possibly have? Sirius isn't gay, after all. He gets the reaction he wants. Lupin flinches, and Sirius fumes. Fuck you, Reg. Yeah, fuck you right back. Okay, Merlin. James steps forward, hand running through his hair as he sends Sirius a look that means something along the lines of stand down. After a few seconds, he turns back to Regulus. It's unnerving how much this hurts. Being so close, but not being allowed to know him, to touch him. It hurts more every time they do it. Weak. The familiar voice in his head sneers. Every day it sounds more and more like his mother. I am, he thinks. I am. That okay with you? James asks. Regulus blinks. What? The question. There's that concern again. Oh, Regulus shakes himself. Yeah, that's fine. James nods, followed by a moment of silence, and Regulus realizes they're all waiting for him to drink now. He looks down at the glass vial in his hand and fights the urge to smash it on the floor. This is his fault. He knows that. His miscalculation. His optimism that he would be strong enough to set this thing between him and James on fire. But he isn't. Not yet. Weak. He pulls out the stopper and tips the potion into his mouth in one swift motion. If he thinks about it, he knows he won't be able to do it. Better to have it over with fast. He swallows, and then, before he can help himself, he laughs, licking his lips and looking at Lupin. Lemon? He asks. There's only the shortest of pauses before Lupin nods. It came through then? Yeah, covers the aftertaste. It's smart. Most people try to make potions sweet, but the lemon won't interfere with the dandelion root. Yes, exactly. Lupin seems to almost forget that they don't like one another, and Regulus wonders if this is the potion at work already, if he would have complimented Lupin without it. He thinks he would have, but the uncertainty adds a new level to the anxiety already bubbling inside him. After a few more seconds of tense silence, James turns to Lupin. How long until it kicks in? Lupin shrugs. Depends on the person, but should be any time now. James opens his mouth, but Sirius beats him to it. I want to be sure. Before you ask it, I want to be sure the potion is working. James grimaces. And how do you propose we do that? Sirius turns to Regulus, who feels his pulse speed up to an almost certainly unhealthy level. But James holds his hand out before Sirius can speak. You ask me, he says to Sirius. If he agrees to answer, I'll ask him. A loophole. Regulus is grateful. If Sirius finds this suspicious, he doesn't show it. But he supposes that James being a self-righteous asshole is probably par for the course. Okay, Sirius says finally, eyes still on Regulus. Ask him what his teddy bear was called when we were kids. Regulus feels his whole body collapse backward against his chair. That's a question he can answer. James still turns to him, eyebrow raised, and Regulus nods. Screw embarrassment. He'll take that over heartbreak any day. Regulus, James says firmly. What was the name of your teddy bear when you were a kid? He feels it instantly. The tug in his chest. The words ripped out of his head. Cuddletons. Cuddletons? Sir Cuddletons the Third, if you want to be formal. Regulus stares flatly at James, who is clearly fighting back a laugh. Children have given stuffed animals more ridiculous names. Have they? And then, seeming to remember that his friends are in the room with them, James looks at Sirius. Yeah, that's it. Sirius nods. James turns back to Regulus. Ready? He nearly rolls his eyes. Yes, please, let's get this over with. James holds his stare like he's holding his hand, and Regulus wonders if the other two can see it. Do you, Regulus Black, intend to expose in any way the nature of the relationship between Sirius Black, your brother, and Remus Lupin to anyone? Regulus doesn't waver, feeling the tug again and not trying to fight it. No. Great. James gives him a tight smile, clapping his hands together and turning to his friends. Well, that was rather anticlimactic, but I think we're Does he really ask about me? Sirius cuts across at James, looking right at Regulus, who blinks back at him. Oi! James objects, but Regulus waves him off. Hamon Veritaserum, he says slowly, eyes on his brother. And that's the question you want to break our agreement to ask. He can feel the answer tickling the back of his throat, the sensation growing more and more insistent with every moment he doesn't answer. There's a pause before Sirius nods. Yeah, he says, voice a little rough. It surprises Regulus. Sirius has never seemed to care much about their father before, but then he supposes that's the Black family talent, isn't it? Aloofness. Yes, he says finally, feeling an exceptional amount of relief as he lets the truth escape his mouth. I tell him you're okay, that we still talk. He feels the words tumbling out without his permission. It makes him happy. Sirius scrunches his face. Why? Merlin, Sirius, enough? James is standing between them like he can physically shield Regulus from the questions. But this doesn't feel like foul play. Doesn't feel like Sirius trying to take advantage. At least not much. It feels sincere. Because he loves you? The words come easily out of his mouth. On this potion, he doesn't have to think. It just rips the thoughts from his head. Terrifying and convenient all at once. He sees the words hit Sirius. Knows how much more they mean because of the Veritaserum. Lupin steps a little closer to him, hand reaching out, squeezing his arm. It's work for Regulus not to look at James. You really believe that? Sirius asks finally. It's only barely a question, more rhetorical than anything, but the potion doesn't distinguish between rhetorical and sincere. James doesn't like this. Regulus can see him getting antsy, and he knows he has a right to be. Regulus is letting Sirius take too many liberties, but he's been waiting for years for Sirius to care about their father. Yes. It's an easy answer, one he isn't afraid to give. Sirius nods slowly, an expression on his face that Regulus can't decipher. And you, Reg, you really hate me as much as you seem to? He feels his eyes go wide. No, he grimaces, trying and failing to fight back the next sentence. I love you, even when you hurt. Well, isn't that embarrassing? Sirius, this isn't fair, James is saying, but Sirius doesn't take his eyes off Regulus, and Regulus doesn't look away. Are you okay, Reg? He asks. Do you need help? Oh, fuck, he had not been expecting that one. I feel like I'm drowning. The words come out of him too fast. He's been letting the potion take too much control and he can't stop himself, can't modify his answer, can't stall. It just comes out. Reg, Sirius starts, sounding somewhere close to heartbroken, and honestly, this has been more than enough for Regulus. I have to go, he says, getting to his feet and booking it toward the door. Regulus, Sirius tries again, reaching out for him, but Regulus manages to squeeze past him, narrowly avoiding Sirius's fingers. He feels shaky and like he might be sick, pushing through the door of the classroom and into the hall on the other side. He's not going back to the Great Hall, not like this. Of course, he isn't exactly sure where he is going. The dorm? Jesus, all he needs is for someone to ask him where he's been or what he's been doing. Fucking Veritaserum. He has to go somewhere safe, somewhere he can ride this out alone without anyone else picking at his fucking soul. He'd expected Sirius to try something, but he thought it'd be cruel. Something designed to make Regulus squirm. Not whatever the hell that was. He tries to suppress the memory of his own voice. I feel like I'm drowning. God, why did the truth have to sound like that? So small and pathetic. Couldn't he have just said no? Why couldn't that be enough? Reg? He mutters. He looks over his shoulder as James comes jogging down the hallway, then quickly checks that they're alone. James rolls his eyes. Give me a little credit, he mutters under his breath. What are you doing? What did you tell them? He looks behind James, waiting for his brother to appear, but he doesn't. Told them I was going to check on Mary, James says, causing Regulus's stomach to squirm more than it already has. Oh, he says, not sure what to do with that. I'm not going to leave you alone when you're in Veritaserum. Come on, let's go to the room. That nearly stops him in his tracks. Now? Yeah, now. What about dinner? Your friends? James rolls his eyes again. You think I give a shit about any of that right now? After this day? And for the first time, Regulus can hear the exhaustion in his voice. Come on. And then he speeds up, and Regulus realizes it's so they aren't walking side by side. Because Regulus, doesn't want anyone to see them together. He is simultaneously grateful and so sorry, all at once. They walk like that all the way, James a decent distance ahead, enough that no one passing by would think that they had anything to do with one another, but still close enough that James can keep an eye on him, because Regulus knows James well enough that that's what he's doing. On another day, under different circumstances, it might irritate him. But today, he just feels warmed by it. Maybe that's the Veritaserum too. By the time he gets to the spot on the 7th floor, James has already disappeared inside, Regulus following quickly after. This is reckless. Being here so early, disappearing after a student has been dropped at the infirmary, bloodied and cursed. Yet still, he feels himself relax the minute he crosses the threshold. No longer in danger of being stopped and asked something he would rather not answer. James is on the bed, legs crossed. Are you... He stops himself, frowning. Regulus arches his brow in question. Sorry, James says eventually. I'm trying not to ask you any questions. Of course he is. Regulus sighs, toeing off his shoes and moving toward the bed, sitting across from James. Their eyes meet, and after a few seconds, James reaches out and gently brushes a stray curl off of Regulus's face. "I'm sorry," he says finally. "I should have stopped, serious." Regulus lets out a dry laugh. "It's fine. It was inevitable. And then, I thought it would be worse." James grimaces. "I'm still sorry." Which is ridiculous. If anything, James is the one trapped in the middle here, between Regulus and his friends, Regulus and the rest of his life. It isn't fair. But then, none of what Regulus has asked of him is. "You can, you know," he says, after several moments of silence pass. James looks at him confused. "Can what?" "Ask me questions." It's a dangerous door to open, and Regulus wonders if Lupin did something to the Veritaserum to make him act so carelessly. James's look of confusion doesn't go anywhere. Instead, it's joined by surprise and fear, maybe? "Yeah, but you can't really say no, or under the..." He frowns, clearly frustrated with his inability to articulate himself. Not that Regulus needs him to. Regulus shrugs. "I trust you." Weak. He watches James's eyes widen as he realizes how much that means while Regulus is still under the power of the potion. Personally, Regulus chooses not to think about it. There's another beat of stunned silence before a smile starts to pull at the corner of James's mouth that's all kinds of trouble. "All right." James licks his lower lip, and it's impossible for Regulus to keep his eyes from following his tongue. The bastard. "First time you looked at me and thought, yeah, I'd shag that." Regulus rolls his eyes, fully intending to say, "I have never thought that," because he likes to think about himself as someone with a certain amount of dignity. Unfortunately, what comes out of his mouth is, "Third year." He frowns while James lets out a cackle. "My third year or yours?" "Mine." The word jumps out of Regulus's throat. It's uncomfortable to speak truths that you don't want to, but wholly unnatural to speak truths that you didn't even realize existed. James is absolutely beaming. "What did it for you exactly? My mastery of Quidditch? My witty sense of humor?" "Yeah, that's likely." James is undeterred. "My irresistible beauty?" Regulus feels the words coming up his throat and braces himself. "You took your shirt off." Oh, wait. Maybe Regulus does remember this. The image of James walking up the hill from the Quidditch pitch fills his mind. He sees him grabbing the back of his shirt and yanking it over his head. Damn Regulus's 13-year-old self. James laughs. "Irresistible beauty it is, then. You really have a thing for shirtless me, huh?" "Yes," Regulus says too quickly. He winces. James is so happy, he's practically vibrating. "Go on, then." He knocks their knees together. "Ask me something." Regulus arches his brow. "You take Veritaserum too?" "No, but I'll tell you the truth anyway." He says the words casually, like they cost him nothing. And Regulus knows that it's because they don't. Honesty is easy for James Potter. But it still makes something pull on Regulus's heart. "Same question," Regulus says after a moment, because honestly, he's been wondering for the past year what exactly it was that flipped James Potter. James tilts back his head, like he's looking for the answer on the ceiling. "I think it was probably Quidditch. Your first game last year." He looks back at Regulus. Or at least, was when I couldn't ignore it. Regulus rolls his eyes. "Of course, you have a Quidditch kink." "Whoa, it's not a kink." Regulus gives him a flat stare. "What?" James asks indignantly. "It's not, it's just the tight pants, and well, you handle that broom so fucking well." Regulus almost chokes. "Sorry, was that a dick metaphor?" "What?" James looks genuinely affronted. No, you're so powerful out there, so in control of everything. It's hot. There's an actual blush on James's cheeks, and it happens so rarely, because James is shameless, that Regulus can't help but stare for a minute. He's not sure if James notices, but he must. Eventually, Regulus coughs, clearing his throat and dropping his eyes. Go on, then. Next question. He prompts. He sees the moment James thinks of a question and the moment he falters. Like he doesn't know whether or not he can ask it. James? He says. And James looks up at him sheepishly and then away. You, He laughs nervously, scrubbing at the back of his neck, and Regulus finds himself intrigued now. You really love me? James finally manages, taking Regulus by surprise. You think I don't? James shrugs. No, I don't know. I think sometimes I can sort of push you into things. Which is ridiculous, and Regulus is about to say so, except the truth is currently pushing uncomfortably against his teeth. He rolls his eyes, feeling confident in his answer, until he hears himself say, I've loved you since I was 11 years old. Regulus very promptly shuts his mouth, and then, before he can help it, he laughs because, yes, okay, he's thought that before, but he hadn't really believed it was true. It was hyperbole, melodrama, teen angst. He hadn't really thought, yes, it had felt like love, but all crushes do at 11. Don't they? It's only after a few moments of spiraling that Regulus realizes James hasn't said anything, which is entirely out of character for him. He looks up to find the other boy staring back at him, wide-eyed. Since you were 11? He says, his voice a tangled mess of reverence and pride and absolute confusion. Regulus shrugs, but, of course, James phrased that as a question, and before he knows it, more words are bubbling out of his mouth. It's always been you, really, for me. And oh boy, does he hate saying that out loud. Hate knowing that it's true. He closes his eyes then. Like maybe, if he can't see James, he'll forget those words ever came out of his mouth. Weak. Reg, James says eventually. Regulus keeps his eyes closed. Yeah, okay, maybe questions was a bad idea. We should move on. I think I've embarrassed myself enough for one day, I think. Regulus. He cuts himself off, and Regulus isn't really sure what's going on, and then... Can I touch you? Where? Face? Slowly. Regulus nods, still not opening his eyes. Yeah, okay. When James's touch comes, it's soft and familiar, and after a moment, Regulus feels himself leaning into it. James starts by cupping his cheek, hand eventually sliding down so his thumb can trace the line of Regulus's lower lip. Regulus feels oversensitive. Like with his eyes closed, every touch is 10 times more intense. Goosebumps pebbling his skin. After a while, James starts carting his hand softly through Regulus's curls. And Regulus is embarrassed when he hears himself hum in appreciation. Can I kiss you? James asks after a few minutes. Yes. James's hand falls to the back of his neck, pulling him forward, their mouths meeting gently. It starts sweet, their lips pressed together, Regulus's hands still at his sides, but slowly he feels the heat building, feels them falling onto the mattress, pulling themselves closer together. James's mouth opens, Regulus's hands sliding under his shirt, soaking up the heat of his bare skin. James kisses along his jaw, down his neck, pulling lightly on Regulus's hair and ripping a groan out of him. Instantly, the sound brings James's lips back to his, like he's trying to taste it. And then he slides his thigh between Regulus's legs, and the friction is... Oh! The sound punches out of Regulus, his eyes flying open for the first time. James pauses, pulling back just enough to see his face. You okay? Yeah, it's good. And it is, which is the problem. Regulus doesn't know what to do with good. He doesn't feel good during sex. He never has. He feels numb or panicked, but this is... Fuck. He drops his head against James's shoulder, his body moving instinctually, without technique or grace. You're so fucking beautiful. James's voice is husky as he presses his mouth against Regulus's ear. I can't stand it sometimes. I have these dreams. I wake up so fucking hard, I barely need to touch myself. Regulus hears himself whimper, nails digging into James's arms as he ruts against him. Sometimes all I have to do is think about your mouth, and I get there. God, he's not going to last. And that thought hits him like a brick wall, because he's never done this before with someone else, and he feels like his skin is alive with the anticipation. A tingly feeling rushing through him, making him shiver at the thought of what they're building up to. What he's building up to. Still okay? James asks, sounding out of breath, his words hot on Regulus's neck. He nods, not quite sure he can find his voice, nipping at James's lip and looking up to find James's eyes blown wide with desperation. God, James groans, hands roaming all over Regulus's body, touching every part of him, pulling him closer as Regulus keeps grinding against his thigh. You're so good, Reg, so fucking good. Another embarrassing noise leaves Regulus's mouth as he drops his head, pressing it against James's chest. There's a part of him, through the haze of yes, 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 and more, that is terrified. Terrified of the feelings building inside of him, terrified of the fact that James is seeing them, the fact that he has the power to cause them. Normally, that terror takes over. Normally, that terror takes all the good parts of this and turns them into dark bedrooms and hands covering his mouth. But then, James starts sucking on his neck, going at it with purpose, and Regulus squirms under the attention, feeling like every nerve in his body is being turned on, holding him solidly in the moment, here and now. I know it's fucked up. James rambles into his skin. He sounds wrecked, even though Regulus isn't sure how he can be. He's hardly touched him. But sometimes, all I think when I see you with other people is how much I want to fucking own you, to have them know that you're mine. He keeps working on Regulus's neck between words, licking and kissing and biting. Because you are, aren't you? His voice rolls through Regulus like thunder. Mine. Regulus shivers. He should say no, because it is fucked up. But James's voice and his hands and his mouth are making him feel loose and out of control in a way he isn't used to. And some pathetic, needy part of him wants to be owned, to be marked, to belong. James's teeth sink a little deeper into his skin, ripping the yes from Regulus's throat. James shifts somehow, managing to press more of himself against Regulus, the pressure sending a jolt of pleasure through Regulus's whole body. And suddenly, he's nothing but feeling. No words or thoughts or distinguishable parts. Every molecule in his body humming with something that makes his toes curl and his voice crack, noises leaving his mouth that he has no control over. For a minute, he feels like a live wire. Every touch, a little too much, but also so fucking good. His heart beating fast as he collapses further into James, all the tension draining out of his body, leaving him boneless and sated. After a few minutes, or hours, or days, because honestly Regulus can't tell, he feels James kiss the top of his head, bringing him more into focus. You okay? James asks. Regulus nods before realizing that he's been incredibly selfish. Sorry, he croaks, hand reaching out. You must be... But he stutters to a stop when he finds his way to James's crotch, which is damp and soft. He pulls back, looking at James, who has the audacity to hold his gaze without even seeming embarrassed. James, Regulus says slowly, Did you just come from watching me? His cheeks are rosy as he smiles. Might have, yeah. Regulus goes to laugh, except for some reason it comes out choked, and he watches the mirth drain from James's face instantly. Reg? And he wants to answer, except suddenly he's too hot. This new, overwhelming feeling in his chest, he rolls away from James onto his back, trying to breathe through it, only to find, to his horror, that he's crying. And not subtle, quiet tears, but ones where his chest hitches and his shoulders shake, and he quickly brings his hands to his face. James is sitting up now. Shit, Regulus, was that? But Regulus shakes his head, unable to stop fucking sobbing. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm crying. He wishes he sounded angry, because he feels angry at himself for doing this. Was it too much? James asks softly. Again. Regulus shakes his head. No, fuck, it was perfect. James just sits there silently for a moment, and Regulus doesn't blame him. If he was James, he'd be walking out of the fucking room at this point, because clearly Regulus is completely unhinged. Can I touch you? James says eventually, and Merlin, it must be so annoying for him to have to ask that all the time. Yes. James shuffles up the bed a little, leaning against the headboard before pulling Regulus to him. On him, really, into his lap. And Regulus goes willingly, curling up against James's chest as he rests his chin on the top of his head. I'm sorry, Regulus says again, because he's so fucking mortified, he doesn't know what else to say. The sobbing has started to slow down, turning into intermittent hiccups as James rubs circles into his back. Are you okay? Yes. Were you okay before, while we were... Yes, Regulus repeats emphatically. James kisses the top of his head. Then I don't know what you're apologizing for. Regulus doesn't bother dignifying that with an answer, and the Veritaserum must be wearing off, because nothing compels him to. Eventually, James goes on. It's a lot, Reg. It's a lot for me, too, but as long as you're okay. He feels James shrug. I don't really care about the rest of it. Just don't let me push you, okay? Regulus presses impossibly closer, because James is warm and steady, and he is weak. Yeah, he says eventually. Okay. And then, voice small, do you know where our wands are? Because I could really use a cleaning spell. And because James Potter is a bastard, he laughs. They shouldn't fall asleep. It's reckless. Tonight's theme, apparently, but they do anyway. James cleans the pair of them up and then wraps himself around Regulus again, and it's nice and easy, and Regulus is fucking exhausted after the past few days. It only takes a few minutes of James's warmth before his eyes start to get heavy. He has a vague memory of James getting up at some point to take off his trousers. He has a thing about sleeping in trousers. Mainly, his thing is that he won't do it. Go back to sleep, he says as he slides back into bed. We should go, Regulus mumbles, because he has a sneaking suspicion that Mary McDonald's attack is going to result in more intense curfew policing, and no doubt they'll already be looking into his dorm after what happened tonight at dinner. The last thing he needs to be doing is disappearing. Despite all that, he doesn't actually try to get up. Instead, rolling toward James and placing his head on his chest. I'll wake us up early, James whispers. Regulus falls asleep to the sound of his heartbeat. When he blinks awake again, the room is still dark, and without windows, it's hard to tell how much time has passed. Eventually, when he comes to enough, he realizes that James is running his hand through his hair. Hey, Regulus croaks, nuzzling against James's chest before he can stop himself. Hey, James says softly, kissing his temple. Time to go? Almost, James says. Regulus hums, enjoying the feeling of James's fingers brushing against his scalp. It takes a while before he's really able to process how early it must be. James has Quidditch practice at the crack of dawn, so if it isn't time to go yet, it must not even be 5 a.m. For some reason, it makes something tighten in his chest. "Did you sleep?" he finally manages to ask. James makes a non-committal noise. "A bit. Couldn't quite get my brain to shut off." Regulus's chest grows tighter. "What were you thinking about?" James doesn't answer, like he's pretending that in the absolute quiet of their room, there's some way he could have not heard. Regulus considers letting it go because right now this feels so good, and he's afraid of ruining it. But eventually, his curiosity gets the best of him. "James, what were you thinking about?" He feels wrung out after yesterday, from the fear and anxiety and intimacy. He's afraid he won't be able to handle what's coming. "Nothing. I was just thinking about yesterday, and anyway, it's nothing." But it's very clear from his tone that it's not nothing. "James?" "You said..." James starts and stops. He can't make up his mind about whether or not to continue. Eventually, he seems to accept that he's not getting out of this without giving Regulus something. "You said you felt like you were drowning." Oh. Regulus had been really hoping they would just skip over that bit. "Yeah," he manages finally. "What did you mean by that?" Regulus forces himself not to tense because he knows that James would be able to feel it. "I don't know." The hand in Regulus's hair stills, and he hears James sigh. Regulus sits up abruptly, shrugging James off as he rests his elbows on his knees and scrubs the remaining sleep from his eyes. "Please, James, just leave it." But for once, James doesn't listen to him. I don't understand because I'm here, Reg. I'm here. You don't have to. I'm not sure how to make you get that. How many times I have to say it?" Regulus grinds his teeth. "And I'm not sure how many times I have to tell you that it's not enough." That, Regulus is willing to admit, was the wrong thing to say. "Ah," James says eventually, a weird stiffness to his voice. "Okay then." Regulus listens as James gets out of bed, feeling his heart sink. He watches him grab his trousers off the floor, pulling them up over his boxers. "James," but it's his turn to get cut off. James is still speaking in that strange tone of voice. Brittle, Regulus realizes, ready to crack. "Sorry that I'm not enough." He doesn't look at Regulus when he says it. There's definitely anger there. Anger and a tangle of other emotions that Regulus doesn't want to be responsible for. James starts walking toward the door, which results in Regulus doing one of the most pathetic things he's done to date, including crying after sex, blocking his path, like some heroine in a romance novel. It's clumsy, he's still sleepy, and he practically trips on his way to stand in front of the door. "Fuck, James, please, I didn't mean that." James stops in front of him, staring for a long time before he sighs, running a hand through his hair. "Thing is, Regulus, I think you did." "Not the way you..." Regulus exhales, trying to get himself in order. "I just meant that things with me are so big. They're too big to be solved by one person." But he can tell before James even opens his mouth that he still isn't buying it. Regulus wonders if that's some of his hubris bleeding through. Nothing is too big for James Potter, the savior of all beaten dogs. I got serious out. It is work for Regulus to hold his tongue, to keep back the plethora of sharp remarks begging to come out of his mouth. He's getting incredibly tired of this comparison. "I am not my brother," he says coldly. "His choices are not mine."
I don't think Sirius saw himself as having choices. Well, Regulus said stonily, he did. And you don't think the same could be said about you? No. James shakes his head. The problem, Reg, he says eventually, is that sometimes it feels like you want to be stuck. Like you've already told yourself the story of your life, decided where it's going to go, decided what you're going to get, and you're not willing to change it. Regulus opens his mouth indignantly, but finds he doesn't know what to say. He's wrong. James is wrong, but he can't find the words to tell him how. Tell himself how. He doesn't want to be stuck. Why would he want that? Look, James says eventually, I have to get going. I have Quidditch. No, Regulus wants to say. Get back in bed. I want to feel your hand in my hair. I want to hear your heartbeat. I want you to promise you still love me. Because he hadn't said it. Last night, Regulus had cut himself open and laid himself bare, but James hadn't said it. And he knows that it's just semantics, that it doesn't mean anything. But in this moment, it feels important. His whole being revolts as he finds himself saying none of that, silently moving out of the way instead. James, he says, as James gets one foot out the door. He turns back. I love you. Regulus fidgets, uncertainty smothering his words. There's only a brief pause, but it's enough to sting. I love you too, Reg, James says, and for the first time, Regulus isn't sure he believes him. Chapter end notes. Hey, hi, hello. I'm sorry this is late. I promise I really do want to keep getting out a chapter a week. I hope you liked it. Also, I'm sorry I didn't reply to more comments on this last chapter. I meant to, and somehow stuff kept coming up. But I appreciate every one of them. Thank you, as always, for reading. Chapter 27. Chapter summary. This chapter sounds like Now We're Awake and Everything is Okay by the Alaskan Tapes. Trigger warning, discussions of sexual assault. Content warning, discussions about sex. This probably doesn't need to be here, but sometimes I get nervous that I'm not content warning as much as I should, so it's not like a sexy discussion, it's very much just dumb boys pretending they know about sex. Let's get into it. I'm here, Reg. I'm here. And I'm not sure how many times I have to tell you that it's not enough. James starts having nightmares again. He's not sure why. It's been almost a year, and it's not like anything has happened. At least not to him. They're different than they were before. Regulus is always standing alone in the dark. Not because it's nighttime, or because someone has turned out the lights, but because there's nothing else. No walls, no floors, no sky, no earth. Everything is black, and he's just sort of there, alone. Afraid. James calls out to him, but he doesn't hear. Reaches for him, but he doesn't feel. And honestly, that's scary enough. To watch the terror growing in his eyes and not be able to do anything about it. The dreams could end there and James would still wake up in a cold sweat. They don't end there, though. At some point, while James grows more hysterical in his attempts to get to Regulus to even look at him, hands start reaching out in the dark. If they belong to bodies, James never sees them. Just hands. They grab hold of Regulus's ankles, his calves, his wrists, and Regulus starts screaming, begging, James, James, James. His voice splits open. It cracks itself in two, calling out for him. I'm here, Reg. I'm here. And I'm not sure how many times I have to tell you that it's not enough. James sits up, breathing heavy, sheets damp with sweat. He's shaking, biting down on his tongue to keep back whatever it is that's stuck in his throat. A sob, a scream, his supper. He cast a silencing charm over his bed before he went to sleep. Does it every night. He can only imagine the things he's yelling. It takes a few moments, but he starts to settle, breath slowly evening out. It's late, but not nearly late enough. Still another 3 hours before he can justify getting ready for Quidditch practice. That being said, there's no way in hell he's going back to sleep. After a few seconds of indecision, he throws his blankets off, pulling himself out of bed. If he's going to be awake, he might as well be useful. He grabs the charms essay he'd been working on and slips out of the dormitory, trying not to resent the fact that Remus is clearly no longer sleeping in his own bed. Grumbling to himself, he trudges down to the common room. Someone's up late. His head snaps up as he reaches the last step, finding a pair of sparkling brown eyes staring back at him. What the hell? Is all his half-asleep brain seems to come up with. Mary cocks her brow. And good evening to you, too? She's curled up in the corner of the couch, a pink housecoat James has never seen her wear before wrapped around her, face washed clean of makeup, leaving her looking incredibly young. Sorry. James brings his free hand up to scrub his face. Still a bit out of it. Mary nods, eyes drifting toward the fire. Tell me about it. A long moment of awkward silence passes before she rolls her eyes. Well, are you going to sit or are you going to keep standing there? James snaps awake. Oh, yeah, right. He drops his coursework on the coffee table and collapses next to Mary on the couch, sighing as he sinks down, head falling back so he ends up staring at the ceiling. That was a big sigh, Mary says. James smiles dryly, rolling his head toward her. No one gets up in the middle of the night for a little sigh. The corners of her mouth twitch up. Touché. He yawns, turning back to the ceiling. When are you allowed to start Quidditch again? He asks, because if he doesn't start talking, he's going to fall asleep, and that's the last thing he wants. Now it's Mary's turn to sigh. Not until after Christmas. James winces. Fuck. Head injuries are apparently serious, she goes on flatly. Oh yeah, I vaguely remember that being mentioned. Another pause, the low burning fire crackling in front of them. James wonders absent-mindedly what the house elves do if the common room never empties. Do they still come and clean it? Well, hold strong until you get back. Only one more game anyway. We're gonna take it this year. I can feel it. He finds himself saying. Mary makes a non-committal noise that draws James's eyes to her. She's been back from the infirmary all weekend, but today actually, he supposes, will be her first day in classes again. James nudges her gently with his foot. You okay, MacDonald? A long moment of silence passes. Have you ever felt helpless? She asks, eyes still on the fire. James nods slowly. Yeah. All the time. Mary's fingers fidget with the sleeve of her housecoat. Despite the fact that she's sitting next to him, she feels far away, like she's drifting. James has a sudden desire to reach out and anchor her. Not me, she says finally. I've never been helpless. She bites down on her lower lip, and James isn't sure if she's going to continue. But then, when I was little, I used to watch all these movies, and no matter what the story was, the girl always needed to be rescued. Like, just constantly. It didn't matter if she was one of the heroes or a love interest or whatever. And I hated that. So I made this list in my head of all the things I needed to know. She laughs at herself. I thought, I'll learn all this stuff, how to swim and fight and untie knots and fly planes. I'll learn all this stuff, and then I'll rescue myself. And James smiles, because yeah, that sounds just like Mary. Even if he doesn't really know much about Muggle movies or what the hell a plane is. And did you? He asks. He can see her swallow. No. Her voice is tight. I got a letter telling me I was a witch. Figured, what do I need to fight for? I have a wand now, I have magic, who's going to be able to touch me?
Somewhere beneath the anger and bitterness is something that hurts. James doesn't know what to say to that. Most people would go with something along the lines of, I'm sorry. I'm sorry this happened. Sorry it happened to you. Sorry you're hurting. But he knows Mary well enough not to. It'd only irritate her. Any word on Mulciber? Cold smile spreads across her face. They tried to expel him, but his parents are kicking up a fuss. They have friends in high places, apparently. James grimaces. Fuck. Mary nods. They promised me, McGonagall and Dumbledore, that he won't be in class, that he'll be doing all his schoolwork in Slughorn's office. Temporarily, anyway. Temporarily? She nods. Until he gets expelled or his parents get what they want and he's let off the hook. He used an unforgivable, James says, outrage breaking through his exhaustion. They can't just do nothing. Mary's eyes narrow, glaring down at the fire. Yeah, well, maybe not. Maybe not what? She keeps glaring. Maybe he didn't use an unforgivable. There's a beat of silence before James runs a hand over his face. Okay, I'm pretty tired here, so you're going to have to explain that one to me. I'm going to have to explain it to myself, too, she mutters. And then, after a bitter silence, they checked his wand. James blinks. Okay. Mary grits her teeth, and James can see the muscles sliding in her jaw. No Imperious. It takes a moment for that really to sink in. Oh, yeah. But you were so sure. Yeah. How? The working theory is that I hit my head, so nothing I think is reliable. She sighs, collapsing back into the couch and closing her eyes, squeezing them shut. Her fingers come up and start massaging her temples. James shakes his head, trying to wrap his mind around this. Just because he didn't Imperious you doesn't mean he didn't still crack my skull open, she finishes for him. Yeah. Maybe. Maybe. She sighs, dropping her head and her hand and looking at him. There are only the tiniest cracks in Mary's shield, a speck of fear hiding in her eyes, the corner of her mouth. Maybe, she repeats again, but I hit my head, so nothing I think is reliable. Maybe he wasn't even there. Maybe I made it all up. Maybe I slipped and fell, and the rest is just some delusion. James hears himself growl. That's bullshit. He almost gets a smile for that. I think so too, believe it or not, she says dryly. But then part of me hopes that they're right. Her hand goes to the back of her head, and James wonders if she even knows she's doing it. Why? He asks eventually. Her eyes have gone back to the fire, the light washing her out, exaggerating the bags under her eyes. Because I've never been helpless. James hasn't spoken to Regulus in days, and he thinks it's starting to get to him, which, if he's being honest with himself, is a bit pathetic. So he does his best not to be honest with himself. It isn't on purpose, the not talking to Reg. Well, not on his end. He has a feeling Regulus is avoiding him, and he isn't sure why. Reg has excuses, of course. Prefect duty, homework, Quidditch practice. Not to mention, the professors have started patrolling the halls at night after the incident with Mary, and as Regulus pointed out, not everyone has an invisibility cloak. James clings to these excuses, uses them to comfort himself when he starts feeling anxious. He knows they aren't true, of course, but it's easier to pretend, which is also pathetic. He really hates being honest with himself. Oi! A balled-up piece of parchment collides with James's head. Pay attention to me! James rolls his eyes, turning it onto his stomach so he can glare at Sirius, who's sitting on his own bed, looking smug. He's alive! Sirius crows dramatically.
You're a brat. Sirius's grin only widens. One of my better qualities. You're going to need to tell me why you're sulking. James frowns. I'm not sulking. That's a no, then. Brat. James lurches to the side, just in time to dodge Sirius's pillow. Good thing you're a beater, 'cause you can't aim for shit. James smirks as he pulls himself upright. Sirius gives him the finger. Pretty sure beaters need to aim. Or do you have yours just shooting bludgers in random directions? I like to keep my players on their toes. Uh-huh. Sirius smirks, shaking his head. Whatever you say, Captain. Sirius has a pile of coursework around him that he's clearly been ignoring. To be fair, since he and Remus have started doing whatever it is that they're doing, Sirius has been a much better student. James is pretty sure getting work done is like foreplay for Remus. So, Sirius says, as though he can hear James's thoughts. You shag your boy yet? A host of unwanted memories flood James's thoughts. Regulus pressed against him, the tiny sounds escaping his mouth, like he couldn't help it. The look on his face when he'd... Merlin, Sirius, what the hell? He says, attempting to push all the thoughts of Regulus out of his head, resenting the curl of want he already feels in his stomach just from thinking about him, followed almost instantly by a pang of fear. Fear that he's never going to see Regulus like that again. Fear that something has happened that he didn't notice, and now it's all slipping through his fingers. They fought. He gets that, but it hadn't been relationship ending, had it? Had it? Had it? Jeez, you're such a prude, Sirius teases. He leans back, knocking a few of his textbooks onto the floor. Not a prude, James manages to say. No? How far have you two gotten, then? James has a very clear memory of Regulus telling him not to talk about sex with Sirius. Listen, I don't... Because me and Mooney... Oh my god! James grabs the pillow Sirius threw at him and holds it over his ears. Don't you fucking dare! Sirius is already laughing. Your face! He wheezes, holding in his stomach. Not a prude, my ass. Now it's James's turn to throw a pillow. Are you trying to scar me or something? Jesus Christ. Sirius is still laughing. Listen. He has to stop to take a breath. I'm just trying to figure out what the normal procedure is here. James blinks back at him. Normal procedure? Yeah, you know, like, I know how it works with girls, how things progress, but this is new territory for me. What are the steps? What are the rules? Is it hand job, blow job, and then... He raises his eyebrows, and James is not entirely sure that he even knows what's being implied. Or are there other steps I'm missing? Steps? Now he just sounds like a parrot. You know, like first base, second base, third base. Sirius is looking at James like he should know what they're talking about. What's a base? James asks. Sirius shrugs. I don't know. It's just something people say. James looks at him skeptically. What people? Just people. Look, forget about the bases. Just, how's this supposed to go? How do I up my game? It's James's turn to laugh now, running a hand through his hair. Shit, Sirius? I don't know. I don't really think about it that much. I just do what feels good. Sirius looks at him for a minute before shaking his head. I mean, it all feels good, I would hope, but I'm just wanting to make sure I check all the boxes. James feels terribly out of his depth. Honestly, I think I'm the wrong person to talk to about this. A funny expression flickers across Sirius's face. You're the only person to talk to about this. Which James realizes might actually be true, and is also pretty tragic for the both of them because he's pretty sure neither of them have a clue what they're doing. James doesn't even know what bases are. Okay. Well, James rubs the back of his neck. I'm pretty sure as long as you're checking the getting off box, you're doing okay. Wow, you really don't know shit about sex, do you? James glares at him. Fuck you. After this conversation, I'd really rather you didn't, Sirius says, grinning. James is running out of pillows to throw. Seriously, though, Sirius moves back to the center of his bed. I've been doing some research. James arches his brow. Research? Is sex something you have to research? Yeah, magazines and stuff. And there's so much shit I've never seen. And some shit I never want to see again. But it's like this whole world of sex out there that I didn't even know about. And things I never even thought of, like lube. Do you use lube? No. Should he? Apparently there's a spell for it, which I'm sure is shit gonna learn, because that sounds convenient as hell. James makes a non-committal noise, only vaguely aware of what you might use lube for. He wonders if Reg knows more about this stuff, but then he doubts Regulus is spending his free time researching sex. So what do you reckon? James blinks, looking back at Sirius, who's watching him expectantly, and James has the feeling he missed something. About? He asks eventually, when Sirius doesn't explain. Top or bottom? Sirius waves his hand impatiently, which makes absolutely no sense to James, so he just keeps staring blankly at Sirius, who eventually starts smirking. Oh, come on, James. You know what I'm saying? No, he really doesn't. When James keeps staring, Sirius lets out an exasperated, if slightly fond, sigh. Oh my god, I can't believe I have to explain this to you. And just because he's feeling a little snippy about being patronized, James snaps back. Nobody is asking you to. One of Sirius's favorite hobbies is knowing more than other people, and James can already see the look in his eyes that means there's no way that Sirius is going to pass up this opportunity. Are you the one getting, or, giving? Even that, James is embarrassed to admit, takes him a minute to figure out. But he does figure it out, without needing any more clarification from Sirius. Thank God. Oh, Christ, really, Sirius? It's a valid question. According to who? Sirius waves his arm around. People, James, people. Jesus, it's like you've never heard of sex in your life. I've heard of sex, James grumbles petulantly. If you say so. Reading a magazine doesn't make you a porn star, he adds, because it's true. But it doesn't seem to bother Sirius. I'll lend you some if you want. I really don't need your secondhand wank material. Thanks, though. But Sirius just grins. Sure about that? You might learn something. Your boy would appreciate it, I'm sure. James shakes his head. This is officially my least favorite conversation I've ever had, which only sets Sirius off, cackling again. Do you need me to explain what a condom is? That's it. I'm leaving. I hate you. Goodbye. Maybe that's too advanced. Sirius wheezes through his laughter because he is objectively an evil person. We can start simpler. See, kissing is when two people... James shoves him on the way out of the room, still able to hear him giggling from the stairwell. James. I'm here, Rick. I'm here. And I'm not sure how many times I have to tell you that it's not enough. James and Mary end up falling into a kind of routine, one which largely involves the two of them sleep-deprived and sitting on the couch in the Gryffindor common room in the middle of the night. Sometimes, Mary brings the muggle candy her parents send her from home. James was skeptical at first, but it's actually pretty good, and nothing is vomit-flavored or trying to bite them, so he might even like it better than wizard candy. He says as much to Mary, who laughs. They talk a lot, because there's not really anything else to do. James gives up on trying to get homework done. He might not be able to sleep, but that doesn't mean he's fully functioning at 3 a.m. He learns a lot about Mary, who apparently he didn't know as well as he thought. He learns she has 3 siblings, all muggles like her parents. He learns that her brother plays football, which is like muggle Quidditch. Well, actually it's nothing like Quidditch at all, but same idea. Mary corrects herself, succeeding in only further confusing James. How can it be nothing like Quidditch, but also the same idea? Mary gives him an exasperated look, like that's the stupidest question she's ever heard. They're both sports. The duh seems to be implied. James decides to let it go. He learns other stuff too, like that Amos Diggory is apparently a very bad kisser. Too many teeth, Mary shivers. James did not press her for details. And that butter tarts are her favorite dessert, and that lilacs are her favorite flowers, and she's never been to Paris, but she's certain she'll end up there one day. living in some beautiful apartment, buying bread at the local bakery every morning and drinking red wine and smoking hand-rolled cigarettes. I can just feel it, you know? She says. It's the most sincere he thinks he's ever seen her. That's where I'm supposed to be. He smiles back, her energy a little contagious, even in the middle of the night. I'm sure you'll get there. He tells her stuff, too. Of course. About his parents, his mom. They wanted a kid so bad. Tried everything. Tried for ages. James is on the floor, leaning back against the couch, lower lip caught between his teeth. Sometimes I feel the weight of that, of being their miracle, of trying to deserve all the love they've spent years saving up. Does that sound selfish? That my biggest problem is being loved too much? He laughs at himself, voice still tight. Mary shakes her head. No, she says confidently. It makes perfect sense. They remind him of the astronomy tower, these little talks. Remind him of those first few weeks of sneaking up there to see Regulus before he really knew what he was doing, where any of it was going. Of sitting and talking for hours and hours about nothing and everything. It makes his chest ache so bad, his hand comes up to press against his ribs, like he's trying to keep something in, keep something together. It's been a week now since he last talked to Reg. He stares at the map every night, but Regulus never goes to the room. Yesterday, James went anyway, because he missed it. Because he had this ridiculous hope that somehow Regulus would know that he was there. He doesn't know what he did, so he runs through everything they said the morning after the Veritaserum. Runs through it again and again, making new wounds, pouring salt in the old ones. He told Regulus once that even if he walked away, he would always come back. It had never occurred to him that one day there wouldn't be anyone to come back to. Mostly, he just misses him. With his whole body, with every inch of himself. What are your nightmares about? Mary is lying on the couch on her back, James mirroring her position on the carpet, both of them staring at the ceiling. The question comes after a long period of silence. You don't have to tell me, she goes on, not sounding apologetic. She never is. Mostly, when he can help it, when he's awake, he does his best not to think about his dreams. Not to go back there. Not to let those images in. Hands and darkness and Regulus screaming his name. He shivers. Letting someone down, he croaks, deciding to keep it vague. He has to clear his throat before he can say any more. There's someone who needs me, and I can't get to them. I'm there, and I can see it all happening, hear them screaming, but I can't save them. He closes his eyes briefly, swallowing. There's a moment of silence, and James wonders if Mary's actually fallen asleep. But then she speaks. You really are the Gryffindor poster boy, huh? James snorts. Don't think Gryffindor had nightmares. Too brave. You can't be brave if you aren't afraid of anything. Isn't that the definition of bravery? Being fearless? He turns his head just in time to see her roll her eyes. No. Bravery is facing your fears. Standing your ground when you want to run. Only psychopaths are fearless. James had never thought about it like that before. Never thought of fear as a necessary part of bravery. Though he supposes he should have. What are your nightmares about, then? He finds himself asking. It's funny how he somehow manages to hear Mary go silent, even though she hadn't been speaking to begin with. There's a shift in the space around her, a tightening of her whole body. You don't have to answer. He does sound apologetic. He always is. The silence stretches on, and James watches her profile from his spot on the floor, watches her chest rise and fall. He tries not to fidget, fight the urge to speak. Eventually, Mary closes her eyes. I think I was raped. The first thing he thinks is, Regulus never says it. Can't even hear the word. The second thing he thinks is, oh my God. I dream about it, Mary goes on when James remains silent. I can feel the weight of him. I can smell him, his skin. She falters, voice cutting off sharply. Did you tell McGonagall? James finds himself asking, not knowing if that's the right response. Dumbledore? Mary exhales heavily, a wry smile in the corner of her mouth. They barely believe me about the curse. I can't imagine they'll take this very seriously. I don't even know what I would say. That I have dreams about some boy lying on top of me? That I don't know what's going on, but I know I don't want it? I don't like it? She lets out a humorless laugh. I'm not even sure I believe me. Something twists in James's stomach. I believe you. Mary opens her eyes at that, turning to look at him. Yeah? James nods, sitting upright so he can look at her properly. Yes. You know, I hit my head pretty hard. I'm not a very reliable source. I believe you. After a minute, she gives him a sad smile. You're a good guy, James Potter. Mary, he says softly. What do you need? What do you want to do? What do you need? He doesn't know. He doesn't know what to do. Just knows that if she tells him, he'll do it. She shakes her head. I don't know what I need, honestly. You want me to beat the shit out of Mulciber? James isn't entirely sure he won't do that anyway. There's a pause. Mary presses the heels of her hands into her eyes. Not the way that people do when they're crying, but like she has a headache. Like she's trying to push something through the back of her skull. James wants to tell her to be careful. He doesn't. I don't think it was Mulciber, she says eventually, sounding tired. James takes that in, nods, ignores the nauseous feeling he has about this whole thing. Okay, he says simply. She drops her hands, turning to look at him, lying down. See? Unreliable. James decides to ignore that. You said you remember other Slytherins hanging around in the hall. She nods. I don't think it was them either. Who do you think it was? There's a long pause before she shakes her head. I don't know. I don't know anything. I have fucking brain damage or something. You could go a little easier on yourself here, Mary. Because she could. Mary only laughs. They're going to get away with it, she mutters bitterly. Because they're boys. Because they're rich. Because my head is broken and I can't get my story straight. They're going to get away with it, and it makes me so angry because something... Her voice cracks for the first time, wobbling out of her mouth. She lets out a frustrated exhale, blinking the moisture from her eyes. Something bad happened, she goes on, voice small. Something really fucking bad happened, and I can feel it in my chest and under my nails and behind my teeth, and I must have taken 100 showers since I woke up in that fucking hospital bed, but I can't seem to wash it off. James reaches out, squeezing her arm. You're remembering things. It's coming back, just like Pomfrey said it would. Give it a few days, a week. See if your memory clears. James can feel her shake under his hand. He can't imagine how she feels. How much this hurts. He tries, but he can't. I don't know if I could stand it, she whispers finally, eyes squeezing shut. James swallows around a lump in his throat. They're not going to get away with it, he says, voice nearly as quiet as hers. I promise. The silence stretches on for a long time before her mouth flicks up at the corner, eyes still closed. Of course you do. That comes out sounding overfond. Bloody Gryffindor poster boy. He watches the map, doesn't sleep. Watches the map some more, doesn't sleep. Watches Regulus walk to and from class with his friends. Watches him spend as little time in the common room as possible and as much time in his dorm as he can. Doesn't sleep. Watches him avoid the library, the Quidditch pitch, anywhere James could reasonably run into him. Talk to him. Doesn't sleep. Sometimes he gets angry, breaks an inkwell by accident when he's throwing things around too aggressively, very much on purpose destroys one of his textbooks by chucking it at the wall, shoves the map roughly into his bedside table and swears not to look at it again, swears that he doesn't care if Regulus wants to sulk or freeze him out or whatever it is he's doing, then he can. James is tired. He's so fucking tired and he doesn't care. So there. Except he does care. Cares a pathetic, all-consuming amount. Except he always takes the map out again, follows the same name around the castle, wonders what he did, wonders what Regulus is thinking, doesn't sleep, doesn't sleep, doesn't sleep, and then it happens. He sees Regulus alone for the first time in days, and he practically sprints out of the dorm. Doesn't answer Remus or Peter when they ask where he's going. Doesn't stop to grab the invisibility cloak. It's just after supper. 8 o'clock, almost curfew. The sun through the castle windows is orange and pink and setting the sky on fire as it drips toward the horizon. James jogs to a random corridor on the 3rd floor, hopes Regulus is still there, hopes he hasn't gone too far. He's almost given up when he finds him, standing in front of one of the windows. James stutters to a stop. Somehow, through the anger and fear and ache, he feels his breath catch. Fuck, he thinks inelegantly. He's so beautiful. For a moment, James can't move. Can't bring himself to ruin the picture in front of him. He's so beautiful, his thoughts ramble on. I love him so much. James really is screwed here. The sudden realization hitting him like a bludger to the chest because he doesn't know what he's going to do if Regulus is finished with him. Doesn't know how he's going to get over this. It's a cliche, the teenager thinking they're in love. Something his parents would laugh about, call cute, and pinch his cheeks. But this doesn't feel cute. This feels like the person he wants most in the world has been avoiding him for days. And he can't sleep, and he can't think, and looking at him hurts. Loving him hurts. Regulus? His head snaps in James's direction so quickly it's almost startling. Hand going predictably to his wand before he recognizes James, and his eyes scan the space around them. Always hiding, always so afraid of being seen.
We shouldn't. You're avoiding me. James steps closer, watching as Regulus barely suppresses a wince. He doesn't answer, just turns his head, looking down at the ground. It hurts, it hurts, it hurts. What did I do? He hates how weak it sounds, but he doesn't take it back. I need you to tell me what I did. Regulus scoffs. You didn't do anything. Then what happened? Another step closer. Regulus still not looking at him. James. It's said in a condescending tone, like he's missing something obvious. Everything feels a little fuzzy, his pulse beating too fast, fear clawing at his ribs. Are you ending this? He doesn't manage to keep his voice level, doesn't manage to keep the pain out of it. Regulus doesn't even try to hide the flinch this time. Doesn't try to answer either. Just stands there, the silence making James's skin feel too tight. He really needs to sleep. Reg? His voice scratches and cracks. Regulus won't look at him. Still doesn't answer. It feels like one of his nightmares. He knows it isn't. He digs his nails into his palms so he can feel the sting. Counts the fingers on his hands. He knows this isn't a nightmare. But Regulus won't look at him. Won't speak. He bends over, grabbing his knees, trying to breathe, trying not to be sick. He really needs to sleep. James? Regulus sounds far away. James still trying to keep his dinner down. He hears the sound of footsteps, but he doesn't raise his head. Merlin, James, are you okay? He shakes his head, and when he speaks, his voice is breathless. Are you ending this? He needs to know. He just needs to know. Regulus makes a noise, and James doesn't know what it means. Frustration, maybe? And then there's a hand in his hair, on his face, his shoulders, forcing him upright. I want to be enough, James says pathetically, barely able to meet Regulus's eyes. I want to be enough. Christ, James, Regulus mutters, holding his face between his hands like he's forgotten they're still in the middle of the hallway. His eyes big and gray and full of regret. I didn't mean it. You did. Regulus shakes his head. You're enough. You're more than enough. You're so much more than I deserve. That's the problem. Can't you see it? His thumbs stroke James's cheeks. Where have you been, Reg? Regulus's usually schooled expression cracks. I'm just trying to do the right thing, he whispers, which makes no sense to James at all. The right thing? James repeats back. Mr. Black. Regulus jumps back, hands dropping from James's face as he whips around. McGonagall walking toward them down the hall. James watches the color drain from Regulus's face, and he wants to reach out and steady him, but he knows that it would only make it worse. Professor? Regulus finally manages to get out, voice so tight it hurts. To McGonagall's credit, she only gives James a brief glance, like finding the pair of them embracing in the middle of the hallway is completely normal. The headmaster would like to see you in his office. Regulus visibly stiffens. What? The word comes out of James's mouth before he can stop himself. Why? McGonagall arches her brow in his direction, but doesn't dignify that question with an answer. When Regulus speaks next, his voice is flat. James has heard that tone before, knows that it means Reg is scared. Of course, Professor. He doesn't look back at James, just starts walking, like they weren't in the middle of, Mr. Potter, I believe it is almost curfew. Perhaps you better head back to your dormitory. James blinks, tearing his eyes away from Regulus's shrinking back, barely resisting the urge to go after him. What's happened? He asks, earning him a rather exasperated sigh. Surely you must know that I can't disclose that information to you? James swallows with difficulty. Is he in trouble? Has something happened with his family? Mr. Potter. Can't I wait for him? He says desperately. I'll just wait outside, I swear. I don't want him to be... We're supposed to be in pairs, right? If we have to go somewhere after curfew, so can I just... James. His mouth shuts at the use of his first name. All further protests dying on his tongue. McGonagall gives him an appraising look over the top of her glasses. He's not sure what she sees, but when she speaks again, her voice is softer than he expects it to be. I will make sure that Mr. Black gets safely back to his dormitory, she says calmly. But right now, I need you to go to yours. And when James still doesn't move, that wasn't a suggestion. His hands are shaking. Regulus, now gone, disappeared around the corner at the end of the hall. It's painful, swallowing his questions, his fear, his indignation. Painful nodding his head and turning back in the opposite direction. He feels useless, helpless. All the things he keeps trying to convince Regulus that he isn't. And it burns the inside of his skin. I'm here, Reg. I'm here. I'm here, Reg. I'm here. I'm here. Chapter endnotes. Hello, beautiful people. I really liked the idea of developing the James-Mary friendship, so hopefully you guys liked it too. Also, shout out to Sirius Black for providing the only comedic relief in this whole chapter. Thank you for all the comments and kudos.